an agenda. I sometimes go to the studio and write on the floor, you know.
They call him Slowhand, God, a living legend of rock and blues.
And everyone turns to see this beautiful.
But behind Eric Clapton's storied career and undeniable musical genius lies a trail of bitter rivalries, scathing criticisms, and legendary feuds that have shaped rock history itself.
There have been times in my past when I've thought, well, I've got to pack this in because it's lonely.
From jealous outbursts to decades-long grudges, Clapton's relationships with his fellow rock stars reveal a man as complex and temperamental as his soulful guitar solos. Today, we're diving into the dark side of rock royalty as we count down the top 6 rock stars Eric Clapton hated the most.
It's not so hard. It's something that I've always dreaded doing because I don't think I had a fairly...
These aren't just professional disagreements. We're talking about genuine animosity that echoed through recording studios, concert venues, and the pages of music history. You might think you know Clapton from classics like Layla and Tears in Heaven, but the stories you're about to hear will change how you view the 3-time Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee forever. From guitar gods who threatened his supremacy to bandmates who pushed him to the breaking point, these feuds defined careers and changed the course of rock and roll. So crank up the volume and settle in as we expose the bitter rivalries, backstage drama, and explosive confrontations that even the most dedicated Clapton fans don't know about. The truth behind these musical battlegrounds starts right now. Number 6, Phil Collins. At number 6 on our countdown is a feud that shocked the music world of the 1980s. Eric Clapton versus Phil Collins. What makes this rivalry particularly fascinating is that it began with the two actually collaborating. Collins played drums on Clapton's 1985 album Behind the Sun, and even produced several tracks. But behind those studio sessions brewed a storm of musical disagreement. Clapton, the blues purist, reportedly despised the pop direction Collins was steering him toward, a direction that Collins himself was riding to massive commercial success with Genesis and his solo career. "I felt like I was being packaged," Clapton allegedly complained to a close friend. "Phil wanted to turn me into some kind of pop act, and that's not who I am. Never was, never will be." The tension reached its peak during the Live Aid concert in 1985. What viewers at home didn't see were the heated arguments backstage about the set list and musical approach. Clapton wanted raw blues power. Collins pushed for radio-friendly arrangements that would appeal to the global audience. Industry insiders claim Clapton later referred to this period as "selling my soul." The commercial success came at the cost of his blues credibility. While Collins rode the 80s pop wave to international stardom, Clapton retreated to re-establish his blues foundations. Their relationship deteriorated further when Collins's pop-oriented production techniques on Clapton's work received mixed reviews from critics, with many blues purists accusing Clapton of abandoning his roots for chart success. What makes this rivalry so significant is how it represented the classic battle between commercial appeal and artistic integrity, a battle that continues to define the music industry today. Number 5. Ginger Baker. The explosive relationship between Eric Clapton and legendary drummer Ginger Baker comes in at number 5 on our countdown. If you thought band breakups were typically clean and professional, the Cream saga will change your mind forever. Cream may have been one of rock's first supergroups, but the chemistry between Clapton and Baker was volatile from day one. Their backstage fights became the stuff of rock legend, with Clapton once reportedly telling a roadie, "Either he goes or I go," before a major show. Former Cream road manager Robert Stigwood revealed in a rare interview, "It wasn't just musical differences, they genuinely couldn't stand being in the same room. Eric thought Ginger was unstable and impossible to work with, while Ginger thought Eric was compromising their sound for commercial appeal." The tension came to a head during their 1968 farewell tour, where witnesses described the two barely acknowledging each other on stage. In the recording studio, they often requested to record their parts separately to avoid interaction. What made this hatred so intense was that despite their personal animosity, they created some of rock's most memorable music together. The creative tension produced masterpieces, but at the cost of their relationship. Baker later claimed, Eric was scared of me. He knew I was the better musician. Clapton responded in kind by allegedly refusing to participate in any Cream reunion if Baker was involved, a stance he maintained for decades until their brief reunion in 2005, which insiders described as professionally cordial at best. The Clapton-Baker feud represents how personal conflicts can both fuel creative genius and ultimately destroy it, a pattern we've seen repeated throughout rock history. Number 4, Frank Zappa. Sliding into number 4 is a feud that pitted two entirely different musical philosophies against each other. Eric Clapton versus the avant-garde genius Frank Zappa. This wasn't just a personal dislike. It was a full-blown musical ideological war that played out in interviews, concerts, and album liner notes. Zappa, known for his experimental approach and satirical edge, made no secret of his disdain for what he called Clapton's predictable blues noodling. In a legendary 1978 interview with Rolling Stone, Zappa quipped, "Eric Clapton is a safe guitar player. He plays the same thing over and over again. There's no danger, no risk, no art." Clapton, furious at these comments, fired back through music journalist friends. Frank Zappa wouldn't know real music if it bit him. All his experiments are just noise hiding his inability to play real rock and roll. The tension reached peak drama at the 1969 Love and Peace Festival, where both were performing. Sources close to the production claim Zappa deliberately scheduled his experimental set just before Clapton's more traditional blues performance, allegedly telling staff, "Let's see him follow that." Industry veterans remember how Zappa would often mock Clapton's guitar solos during interviews, calling them predictable pentatonic exercises, while Clapton dismissed Zappa's work as pretentious and unlistenable. Their musical feud represented a larger divide in rock music, the traditionalists versus the experimentalists. Clapton clung to blues authenticity, while Zappa pushed boundaries, leading to a mutual contempt that lasted decades. Even after Zappa's death in 1993, Clapton notably declined to comment publicly, allegedly telling friends, "I have nothing to say about him that wouldn't be inappropriate." Number 3, Keith Richards. The bronze medal in our hatred countdown goes to the infamous rivalry between Eric Clapton and the Rolling Stones' Keith Richards. A feud so personal it involved love triangles, betrayal, and decades of public sniping. The roots of their animosity trace back to the love triangle involving George Harrison's wife, Pattie Boyd. When Clapton famously stole Pattie from his best friend Harrison, Richards publicly condemned the move, calling it a snake move that showed Clapton's true character. But that was just the beginning. As guitarists, their styles couldn't have been more different. Clapton, the technical blues master, reportedly mocked Richards' sloppy playing style during studio sessions. Richards responded by calling Clapton boring and predictable in multiple interviews. The feud erupted publicly during the mid-1970s when both were battling substance abuse. Richards accused Clapton of hiding behind heroin while he faced the music industry, while Clapton shot back that Richards played the same 5 riffs for 20 years. Their rivalry extended to professional jealousy. When Clapton released his successful albums in the late 70s, Richards allegedly told band members, "Anyone can play slow, Eric just hasn't figured that out yet." Clapton retaliated by refusing to appear on any project where Richards might be involved. Industry insiders reveal that even their mutual friends had to plan separate events to avoid putting them in the same room. The tension was so palpable that record labels avoided pairing them on compilations or tribute albums. This wasn't just professional rivalry, it was personal. From stolen loves to musical philosophies, Clapton and Richards represented everything the other despised in rock and roll. Number 2. Jimmy Page shredding into the number 2 spot on our countdown is the legendary guitar rivalry that defined an era. Eric Clapton versus Jimmy Page. This wasn't just competition, it was a battle for the crown of Britain's greatest guitarist. Their feud began in the early days when both were session musicians in London. Page, already making waves with his innovative studio techniques, reportedly mocked Clapton's one-dimensional blues approach during recording sessions, telling producers, "Eric needs to expand his horizons." When Paige formed Led Zeppelin and Clapton was with Cream, the rivalry exploded. Music journalists of the time describe how Clapton would privately seethe whenever Paige's technical abilities were praised. A studio engineer remembers Clapton saying, "Jimmy hides behind studio tricks. Let's see him play that live." The tension peaked during festival circuits where both bands toured. Paige's theatrical, almost occult stage presence contrasted sharply with Clapton's blues purism. The British press fueled the fire by constantly comparing them, with Clapton allegedly refusing to read any article about Paige. Former Yardbirds bassist Paul Samwell Smith revealed, "Eric couldn't handle that Jimmy took the Yardbirds and made something bigger than what he'd done with them. It ate at him." What made this feud particularly bitter was how Paige seemed to surpass Clapton commercially and artistically. Led Zeppelin's innovations overshadowed Clapton's work, leading to what insiders called an inferiority complex that lasted decades. Even in interviews decades later, Clapton subtly denigrated Paige's playing style, while Paige dismissed Clapton as stuck in the past. Their rivalry represented the classic conflict between technical mastery and commercial innovation. Number 1. Jimi Hendrix. And topping our countdown at number 1 is the most legendary guitar feud in rock history, Eric Clapton versus Jimi Hendrix. This wasn't just hatred, it was a crisis of identity that shook Clapton to his core. It all began in 1966 when Clapton was known as God among British guitarists. Then Hendrix arrived in London and everything changed. Clapton attended Hendrix's first London show and was allegedly devastated. Witnesses report seeing him leave the venue white-faced, muttering, "It's over. I'm finished." The famous jam session at a London club in October 1966 became the stuff of legend. As Hendrix destroyed the stage with innovative techniques Clapton had never seen, Clapton reportedly said, "You never told me he was that bloody good," before walking off stage in what appeared to be a mix of admiration and defeat. From that night on, Clapton's relationship with Hendrix was characterized by deep professional jealousy. Pete Townshend recalls, "Eric couldn't handle having his throne taken away. He went from being slow hand to second hand overnight." Clapton allegedly refused to attend Hendrix concerts and would change radio stations whenever Hendrix songs played. In private conversations, he admitted that Hendrix had ruined guitar for everyone by expanding the possibilities so dramatically. Industry veteran Glyn Johns remembers, "Eric was obsessed with Hendrix. He'd study his techniques, then trash them publicly while privately trying to incorporate them into his own playing." The ultimate tragedy was that when Hendrix died in 1970, Clapton reportedly refused to comment publicly, but later admitted in interviews that he felt relief, a shocking admission that revealed the depth of his complex feelings. This wasn't just professional rivalry, it was the dethroning of a guitar god by someone who rewrote the rules of the instrument. Clapton's hatred for Hendrix masked deep admiration and the painful recognition that he'd been surpassed. And there you have it, the top 6 rock stars that Eric Clapton couldn't stand. From guitar god rivalries to ideological battles, these feuds show us that sometimes the greatest music comes from the most intense personal conflicts. These relationships weren't just backstage drama, they shaped the course of rock and roll, pushed musicians to evolve, and created some of the most explosive creative tensions in music history. Whether it was Hendrix's revolutionary playing that dethroned Clapton, or his bitter battles with bandmates that fueled some of Cream's most passionate music, hatred and rivalry seemed to follow the legendary guitarist throughout his career. What do you think about these controversial rivalries? Did any of these feuds surprise you? Let us know in the comments which rock rivalry was the most shocking, and drop your own stories if you've heard any wild tales about Clapton's difficult personality. If you enjoyed this deep dive into rock and roll drama, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more music history, behind-the-scenes stories, and legendary feuds that shaped the sound of a generation. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss another episode.